Yi Sun-sin was born in the latter half of the 16th century, during the Joseon dynasty of Korea, a time when the nation was divided by internal strife, rigid class systems, and the growing shadow of foreign threats. The people suffered under the ambitions of the nobility, and the seas swarmed with Japanese pirates. Even as a boy, Yi Sun-sin was drawn to the rhythm of the waves. His father, a man of quiet wisdom, taught him patience, to think before acting, to listen before speaking. As a child, whenever he stood by the shore, he felt the sea speaking in a language only he could hear. That language would one day become his destiny. As a young man, he studied diligently to pass the state military exams, but fate did not open its doors easily. During his first training assignment, he was injured and dismissed from duty. For years he faced injustice, forgotten by those in power. Yet within him burned a single conviction: he would not die before serving his country. When he was finally reinstated, he was no longer just a soldier. He was a man who understood how war could break the human soul. At that time, Korea stood on the brink of invasion. Toyotomi Hideyoshi's forces in Japan were preparing to strike across the sea. Yi Sun-sin was appointed naval commander of Jeolla province. His fleet was weak, his ships old, his men few, his supplies scarce. But his greatest weapon was not steel or gunpowder. It was patience and intuition. Each night, he studied maps, memorized currents, wind directions, and tides. For Yi Sun-sin, the battlefield was not the land, but time itself, and he had learned to command it. In 1592, the Japanese launched their invasion at Busan. Cities fell one by one, and despair spread among the people. Even when the capital, Seoul, was lost, Yi Sun-sin did not falter. The sea became his refuge, his final line of defense. In his base, he gathered his sailors and spoke calmly. "The sea is our home. No one breathes here better than we do." It was not an order, it was a vow. His first great trial came at the Battle of Okpo. The Japanese fleet lay anchored, confident and unguarded. He waited for the perfect wind. When he struck, the enemy was caught off guard. One by one, their ships burned. It was more than victory, it was resurrection. The people whispered his name. Yi Sun-sin had become not just a commander, but a living breath of hope. But after every victory, shadows return. Officials in the royal court grew jealous of his fame. Lies spread, forged reports circulated, and envy festered. King Seonjo, deceived by schemers, stripped Yi Sun-sin of his command and imprisoned him. Chains closed around his wrists. The iron was cold, but his spirit burned still. In his cell, he could almost hear the sea beyond the walls, the whisper of waves reminding him. The tides always turn, the tides did turn. When the Japanese fleet resumed its advance unchecked, the king had no choice but to release him. When Yi Sun-sin returned, he was no longer merely a general. He had become a sage, but what remained of his fleet was nearly nothing. Most of his ships had been destroyed. At the War Council, despair weighed on every man's face. Yi Sun-sin alone was calm. He chose the narrow strait of Myeongyang, its treacherous currents, shifting tides, and swirling winds. His enemies numbered over 100. He had only 13 ships. No commander in history had ever faced such odds and triumphed. When the battle began, the sea turned black. The Japanese advanced, confident of certain victory. Yi's fleet appeared to retreat, but he knew the rhythm of the current. He drew the enemy into the narrowest passage, then unleashed the storm. The whirl of water and cannon fire merged into chaos. Hours later, the Japanese fleet lay in ruins. Myeongyang became one of the most extraordinary naval victories ever recorded. Yet Yi remained silent. To him, victory was not glory, it was responsibility. The war raged on. In 1598, the Japanese launched their final assault. Yi Sun-sin led a combined Korean-Chinese fleet into Noyang Strait. It was a cold dawn shrouded in fog. From the mist, enemy masts rose like dark trees. Again, he read the water, the wind, and the silence. His ships struck with precision, turning the sea into a storm of smoke and flame. But amid the chaos, a bullet found his chest. As he fell, his eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. His men rushed to him, but he said nothing. That silence would echo for centuries. The battle was won. The Japanese fleet retreated. But Yi Sun-sin would not rise again. His body lay upon the deck, the sea still rocking beneath him. As dawn broke, a soft wind touched his face. He had not lived to see peace, but he had made it possible. When the news spread, the nation wept. Even the royal court fell silent. Statues were later built, books written, songs composed, yet the truest monument to Yi Sun-sin was not of stone or bronze, but water. Along the Korean coast, the waves still beat in the same rhythm. Before setting sail, sailors pause for a moment of silence, bow their heads, and whisper his name. Because Yi Sun-sin was more than a commander, he was a conscience. His strategies carried timeless lessons. No matter the odds, intelligence and patience could forge victory. In the heart of fear, composure could be a weapon. His faith in his duty outlived him, guiding generations long after his death. Even centuries later, when Korea faced darkness, his name rose again. As if the sea itself remembered him today, in Seoul's Gwanghwamun Square, his statue stands tall. Sword in hand, eyes fixed on a distant horizon. The wind swirls around it, carrying his unspoken words. Though the war has ended, the duty remains. That duty now rests upon every living soul who inherits his legacy. Yi Sun-sin's body is gone, but his spirit lives in the heart of a nation. Steady, eternal, like the tide, the sea still speaks, though few can understand it. For it is the same sea where Yi Sun-sin once made his vow. In every storm's eye, in every dawn's hush, his echo lingers. That echo is not merely a hero's name, but the proof that human resolve knows no boundary. And perhaps, in its deepest truth, Yi Sun-sin's story reminds us of this. True courage is not found in victory, but in remaining honorable after the battle is done.